I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sarah, and together we're the co-founders of Whale Tales, a living library of cetacean stories.
Today we are going to finally talk about porpoises again.
Hooray! Plus a super exciting gray whale tale? That can't be right.
Oh. So sit back and enjoy as we dive right in.
As excited as I am to hear an exciting gray whale tale, because that is Stop the Presses moment of today, it's also Stop the Presses because, yes, you heard right, listeners, we do remember every time that porpoises are part of our cetacean world. Unfortunately, we don't always give them as much love as they deserve. And so we decided for this month's episode, we were going to do another journal club and specifically pick a relatively new Harbor Porpoise article that came out. Woohoo! So welcome back to Journal Club.
We've done this, I think, twice now. And
like
so
4 times.
Oh, I'm great at keeping track of things. It's definitely my job on the team.
We all know whose job that is.
Indeed. It's Lindsay's job. Okay. Yeah. So we've done Journal Club a bunch before, but if you've missed it or if you forget, Journal Club is where we find an article and we all read it and then we come together and talk about it. It's kind of like book club, kind of like school reading assignment, but about cetaceans. Welcome.
Woohoo!
There's a link in the show notes if you want to read the article before we talk about it. Not that there's spoilers because it's a literature article. But,
yeah.
You know.
You never know. So this month, we read this newish article that was published in May, I think. May 2023. Or it was technically accepted in August. So, yeah, brand spanking new. Anyway, it's called Harbor Porpoise Aggregations in the Salish Sea by Dave Anderson et al. And when I first read it, I thought it was Harbor Porpoise Aggregations in the Salish Sea, and I was really confused. So I had to start again.
I love it. So a little bit of background information on sort of like why this article was written and who was involved. A big thing that we'll hear more about when you two get into the results and observations of it's not so much a study. So this is sort of like a compilation article, as it were, of collecting a lot of data from a lot of different organizations.
Yeah, it's almost like a literature review, except the literature is porpoise sightings.
Yes, that's a great way to describe it. So before we get into what was sort of uncovered by aggregating all of that information together, let's take a look back at what we thought we knew about harbor porpoises.
Sounds like clickbait. What you thought you knew about harbor porpoises.
Right. I'd click on it. So typically harbor porpoises were thought to be, and you would have even heard this if you listened to our last porpoise episode when we did talk about harbor porpoises over a year ago. They are the most common porpoise, and in British Columbia waters, which is primarily where this article is looking. Well, the Eastern Pacific,
Salish Sea.
Thank you, in the Salish Sea, exactly. We would have considered harbor porpoises to be solitary or sometimes found in small groups of like up to 3 members. They would have been shy, is sort of an anthropomorphic term that is often used to refer to harbor porpoises because they don't, do all of the more acrobatic-y behaviors, exciting maybe behaviors that you see from some of the other cetaceans along our coast. And they generally were not like a species that many people went looking for. We'll call it that. So the many organizations that worked together to aggregate all of their data decided, hey, maybe if we all pool all of our sightings and all of the things that we've observed in all of the different places in the Salish Sea about these harbor porpoises, maybe we'll learn something new. And I'm not going to spoil what they learned. I'm just going to tell you who all was involved, because it's a lot. Cascadia Research Collective, Pierce College, Pacific Mammal Research, Pacific Whale Watch Association, and the Seaview Marine Sciences. And some of these organizations are Canadian and some of them are American. So you heard that right, folks. We are talking about data shared between countries.
What?
Good job, team.
Yay! Humpback researchers take note.
Okay, so basically, the authors of this paper asked people to do sightings and also took the sightings, or I guess asked people for their sightings. It's unclear.
All of the above.
All of the above. And then looked at all of them and said, what do we know? First, they eliminated double sightings because the big thing they were looking for is not aggressions, but aggregations of harbor porpoises, which is large groups. I think, did they define it as over 20? But
yeah, over 20.
But so they're looking at over 20, and there can be up to 100, sometimes more in the historical research as well, which is a little bit nutso to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So they looked for those and then looked at how many there were and what the validity of the sighting was and how long the sighting was for and stuff like that. And what they found basically was that there's way more than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot more. For even Cascadia, they did 97 surveys since 2016 and covering mainly the southern part of the Salish Sea, mostly Puget Sound. And they've had 450 porpoise encounters, and they had 31 aggregations of 20 or more individuals. 20 more individuals, 31 sightings of large groups of harbor porpoises. And that's just one of these, but there's lots more of big numbers. It's like, 22, 30 in the past couple of years each. So, way more than you would expect.
So the other thing that they looked at in these aggregations when they could, it was sort of this data was more dependent on who was doing the observation. So it's more qualitative, not quantitative. But they looked at the types of behaviors that were happening in these aggregations. And I think it had sort of been commonly known, or like sort of anecdotally known, that porpoises sometimes come together in large groups for feeding, but that it's really just because like they're all in the group because that's where the food is. Like there's a big bait ball and they're all feeding. And then they'll come together like in mating times in like larger groups than twos and threes. And it's very sporadic and really only happens in the summer. And this study found, so they were seeing aggregations year round. They have more aggregations in the summer, but basically are assuming that is primarily due to observer bias. Like that's when there's more observations, more people on the water every day, so they're seeing more, but they do see them all year round. And they're also seeing a lot more variety of behaviors beyond just foraging and mating. There's also other social behaviors, like sort of playful or unknown behaviors, like bow riding and some breaching, and different types of feeding, like cooperative feeding, and other social behaviors that were interesting. So there's definitely, it's not just a summer, like they're not just coming together because there's a bait ball, like they're coming together for other social reasons.
I think the craziest thing that I noted down in the methods, and then there are some decent numbers of these sightings, is that they define long-term aggregations as like a week or 10 days, which is like for 100 porpoises, which is I've literally never heard of. And Whale Tales has been around for 9 years, and I've never heard anybody say that. I remember one instance of Anna Hall, who is an author of this paper, of somebody telling me that she saw a large group of porpoises down, I don't know, Race Rocks or somewhere super down there, and it was super large and it was full of stuff. And maybe that was what sparked this paper. I have no idea because it was a while ago. But like week long 100 porpoises, why isn't anybody talking about that?
I know.
And even the short term aggregations they would define as a day or a couple of days, which is when you see a porpoise, it's like 4 seconds and then it's over. And you're like, did I hallucinate that?
Yeah. The other thing that came out from this, or that I sort of realized from this, and I knew that they'd been working on it, was the Porpoise Conservation Society had been trying to do some photo ID. And so there's, I think, a lot of opportunity presented here to continue studying the fidelity of these groups. They've found fidelity in smaller groups. So like when you see groups of 3, like those 3 individuals are often recited in the same group. But it would be interesting to know, like, these larger groups, is there at this any similar fidelity? The other thing with these groups is sometimes it'll be like fission fusion, so like a bunch of them will come together and then they'll do something like some cooperative feeding, and then they'll split up and then they'll come back together, split up and come back together over a period of time, and that's really interesting too.
Yeah, and the individuals in those subgroups also can change.
Yeah,
which is also interesting.
In that case, yeah, they sort of like shuffle around into smaller groups.
Yeah, and if it's like if mating is occurring, that would make sense.
Yeah, or if they're like splitting up to find food. It seems like a lot of the time they're like probably feeding and mating. Like it, it's not like it's not like either or. It's like a lot of both. Yeah.
Actually, one thing I did want to say that I was thinking about in the discussion, and then I did a search back to see if I missed it, because they talk about social behaviors in cetaceans and how they never really thought that porpoises were one of them. They thought they were solitary. All of this stuff, and then they bring up the southern residents, of course, because it's a very well-known social group, and they have all sorts of things. And they talk about vocalizations and how porpoise vocalizations are different, so they don't necessarily have like name calls, which is not the right name, but I've forgotten the term for a second. But anyway, yeah, they don't bring up the fact that harbor porpoises are prey anywhere in this paper. Like I did a search for bigs and it's not in the paper at all.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I would assume that would be one of the drivers, either of coming together as a group or that group splitting up would be avoiding predation. Yeah,
which is strange, especially like their numbers are rising. They're doing really well in the Salish Sea, but they're also one of the reasons why bigs are doing really well in the Salish Sea, and it seems odd. And
the other thing that they don't really answer, because I don't think it is really that answerable, is like, are these aggregations, like, are we seeing more of them because we're looking for them? Or are we seeing more of them because as the populations come up,
this is just how they are?
This is this is like
similar
back to normal.
Like when the lags came back and they were further south than we thought that they came, and they were in bigger groups, and we're like, this is weird, but is it weird, or is it just the first time we've seen this in 50 years?
Yeah.
Well, and that was the thing that I thought was most interesting about the paper, because it always went back to what our colleagues at the BC Cetacean Sightings Network would say all the time, which is the absence of data is still data.
Yeah.
And to me, this paper was such a great reminder of that, because as all 3 of us know from our time on the water, and I used to see harbor porpoises all the time when I was crossing the strait, but it would be the 1 or 2 and that's it. And everybody on the boat would be like, we have to stop. Like, no, we're not going to see them again. They're gone. It's the bias effect, right? Where like, that's what I saw, and I thought I was out on the water quite a lot. And so it's such a valuable reminder of when you are out on the water, what you are seeing is true of what you are seeing, but that doesn't mean that
that's
other things are not also true.
Yeah, it was good, like, sort of validation of anecdotes. Like, people would hear, I think, and that's probably what led to the study, was like, you would hear anecdotes of these, like, big groups of porpoises, and it's like, oh, that must be a super rare, like, once in a lifetime, like, random occurrence. And then they learn through this, like, no, it happens multiple times a year, like, or multiple times a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's not really about aggregations, but, like, talked about the prey, and I like didn't realize that they ate such a huge variety of things, and like also that it changes a lot. So further south, like the southern part of Puget Sound, the sort of southern end of the Salish Sea, there's squid and also
Eulachon.
northern anchovy and eulachon. Yeah, so like I totally didn't even really click that in this area they would be eating that kind of stuff. I just always assumed it was like
herring
and smelt, and like maybe some salmon, But also they also talked about they sometimes eat adult salmon, which is wild. Not
What?
just smelt. Yeah.
That's like the same size.
Well, it depends on the salmon species.
That's true.
Yeah, the smaller ones they could eat an adult. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And yeah, and like I think because they eat such a variety and they're like all of these various fish have like such different spawning seasons and locations and stuff. So yeah, there's a huge variety of prey, and that might like the spawning, like the cyclical nature of a spawning fish might have something to do with some of the aggregations, but it seems like there's also this social aspect. And also they noticed that during these aggregations the porpoises are more likely to actually interact with slow moving or stopped vessels, which is interesting. Because
like that also brings me back to the safety part of like the large numbers, and I have no idea if that's why they're doing it, but that could be a reason. So it's weird to me that wasn't hypothesized as a reason as well. But I don't know. It's strange. Bigs hunt in small groups, and they only hunt one item of prey at a time. So a large group, your numbers are reduced. It's not like a killer whale's going to go in there with its mouth open and chomp down 5 of you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like this paper asks more questions, or like makes me think of more questions than it answers, which is awesome. Like it's such a driver.
They definitely talk about more things that they want to do, including finding out. That's what it was. They didn't, because that's what led me to think about the literature review definition, is because they don't know what they were feeding on when they observed certain feeding behaviors in the large groups, because they weren't there. They were looking at other people's data, so they got to get out on the water and scoop the stuff up and figure out what it is.
So yeah, I think anything else either of you want to say on the article?
I think my main thing is like this is such a great model of like collating data from such a huge variety of sources and like really making an effort. Like it seems like they did some pretty manual, really detailed work to try to reduce duplicates and like get some like valid numbers, because I think especially in the large aggregations and like a pretty populous, like, you know, in the summer when there's tons of boats out there, that would be so easy to have duplicate observations, but like they did a really great job of that. And then just figuring out ways to meaningfully combine data from like a huge variety of sources, like scientists and citizen scientists and naturalists, and like all these things that are just like, I don't know, it feels very whale talesy.
It did.
There's lots of things they talked about. The use of apps and and then the naturalists are there, and of course like they also talked about the difficulties of that, because apps only have so many behaviors, and also a random person on a boat doesn't know exactly what's happening, and there's going to be that issue, but you still get the info. So
there's an example of one sighting where they saw like an experienced, really knowledgeable observer saw like 40 feeding attempts in this aggregation, but like the average person or even like a less experienced scientist wouldn't catch that many feeding attempts or foraging behaviors in one sighting. So
and like it's very well known in Harbor Porpoise land that males breach before they mate. That's how they mate. But a normal person just out on the water with an app probably wouldn't know that, and it's not going to be in an app for all the cetaceans of the Salish Sea. It's
exactly
breach. So there's no real way to know of like it's
breaching
assumed,
versus breaching leading to mating.
It's probably assumed. I don't know by them, but I would assume that it would be a mating behavior, because that's the main reason for their breaching that we know of. But still, it's one of those things of like, you have no idea. It's not like it's obviously a male either. They're not sexually dimorphic. So
yep, exactly. No, I thought it was a great article. It was super interesting, and I sort of learned and relearned a lot about porpoises. Yeah,
and they're cool. And we would probably know a lot more about them if killer whales weren't here. But I'm happy killer whales are here. But it's just one of those things of, again, similar to this podcast episode, but just as a Salish Sea in general, of like, if they were the only cetaceans that were on our coast, we would know everything about them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're happy to give them a little more attention this month.
Yay, porpoises. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this study too. So as Sarah mentioned, we've included a link to a link in the show notes where you can find the complete article for free. Yay! Free access to science. Feel free to have a read and send us your thoughts. And I know there's a lot of authors because, as we mentioned, there's also a lot of different organizations that were sort of contributing their data to this paper. And so, give them the kudos they're due. Find their socials as well and say, thanks, this was really cool and we like learning about it, and more sharing of data. All good.
Yeah,
amazing.
Let's do it. Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we want to take a moment to tell you about how you can support our podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales.
You can join us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/whaletails. You can join us at the porpoise level for $1 a month. For $5 a month, you can become a dolphin level supporter. And for $10 a month, you can join us at the whale level.
Each level comes with a variety of perks, including polls, thank you postcards, access to extended interviews or stories, extra stories that we've done with our guests. And at the whale level, you can even produce your own fun flipper fact segment of the pod and send me on a crazy deep dive into answering whatever question you have. Plus, our whale level patrons also get access to a special Patreon-only podcast, Whale Tales Watches. Our latest episode of this, we watched The Meg 2, so you didn't have to. And coming up next month, we are going to be watching Orca.
Oh boy.
The horror movie?
I don't know. We'll find out.
Never seen it.
We'll find out. So if you want to hear all about it, you can join us as a whale level patron and we will watch it for you.
Yep. Thank you so much to all of our patrons. You are amazing, and we are so glad you're here.
If you aren't able to support us financially, there's still lots of other things you can do to help us out. You can leave us a rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This will help other people find us. And you can also just tell all your cetacean science podcast loving friends about the podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales so that they can join in.
Hooray! And if you're a new listener, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Now go find more people. Spread the word. Plus, you can follow us on social media at whaletales_org and send us your feedback so that we can keep making the podcast even better. Now, do you know what time it is?
Yes.
Yay!
Yes, I do.
It's time for Fun Flipper Facts. Hooray. It's a little
Beautiful.
soft one for people today. Today's Fun Flipper Fact is also about harbor porpoises.
Yeah.
I wanted to give them a little bit of extra love, and it's kind of a quick one, but an interesting one, going on theme. Do either of you know how deep harbor porpoises can dive?
No.
No, but I'm going to guess not very. But I'm guessing you're going to blow our minds.
Ah, that's exactly what's going to happen.
The leading question, Nicole.
Correct. So I'm not, let's set expectations appropriately here. What I'm about to tell you is not gonna break like a beaked whale's diving record by any stretch of the imagination. We're still talking about like relatively sized, appropriate porpoise level diving.
And they live near shore, so like
they do live near shore.
the options are limited.
Correct. But yet, I was still very impressed by this. So this data actually comes from a not free article, but I will still include the article in the show notes to give the authors and the researchers the credit that they're due. Just know that you won't be able to read the whole article, but it did look at harbor porpoise dive data, and the maximum recorded dive for a harbor porpoise was 740 feet.
Huh.
Oh.
So that's like 250 meters, roughly?
Ish?
Yeah.
And to give you a
That's pretty
visual of that, because let's remember, harbor porpoises are small. They're itty bitty. They are smaller than, shorter
Salmon.
in length than some salmon. Which is insane. Also than all three of us. Not that you, our listeners, can see us physically, but good for to know. They're usually about 5, maybe 5.5 feet long. So they are itty bitty littles. And so think about that. Think about basically you diving up, because this is a tower-sized thing, so it's in the air. But, you know, as we do when we talk about flip mountains, flip buildings, whatever on there, that's as tall as the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah. The Golden Gate Bridge is 745 feet high.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's pretty impressive for some little porpoises. Good job, dude.
They're so tiny. Also, there's a lot of porpoises who live in the Golden Gate Bridge area, so
So
that's
there
fun
you
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw, cute.
I don't think they're diving that deep there because San
'Cause-
Francisco Bay, I don't believe, is that deep.
No, probably not. But
Seems
I've
unlikely.
seen a lot of photos of people taking pictures of porpoises from the Golden Gate Bridge. Anyway, that's
So there you
impressive.
go.
Good job, porpoises.
Is your fun flipper fact.
Hooray! And now it's time for a very exciting whale tale, and that's exciting because it's ours.
Yeah.
Well,
This is the first time I think.
It's yours. It's two of
Yes.
yours. I am
Well,
very jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Lindsay and I went on vacation to Oregon and we went whale watching.
Yay!
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we went to Depot Bay, which is the whale watching capital of something. I don't know. There was a lot
Oregon.
of signs.
Yeah.
Maybe Oregon, maybe Northern Oregon. Nobody knows. Well, they probably know, but I don't. So the thing about Depot Bay is that it's a bay.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what's weird about Oregon is there are no boats
Yeah.
anywhere.
Like we were sitting on the beaches up like slightly north of Depot Bay, like near Seaside, for hours and saw no boats.
No boats. Which when you live in a bay that's next to a harbor, it's weird.
Yeah.
Or next to a port is what I was meant to say. Anyway, so we went to Depot Bay and then there were boats. Hooray! So because this harbor was man-made, basically they like scooped everything out so they could have a teeny tiny harbor of 4 docks, which are mostly whale watching now because they do have a local group of gray whales who don't migrate up to Alaska. They stay in Oregon
Yeah.
all summer long.
Yeah. They're resident sort of like through the spring, summer, early fall.
Yeah, so they came, I think you said sometime in June this year.
Yeah.
And we'll leave soon-ish to go back to Mexico and do their thing.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is that it's very guaranteed whale watching, and you are on a boat for about 10 minutes before
Yeah.
you
That's
So
see a whale.
awesome.
We went on a boat. There was 6 passengers and the driver, captain, naturalist. It was like an open Zodiac. And because of like, you know, the instructions said to come half an hour early and we didn't know what we were getting into. So we, you know, rule following Canadians that we are, we're half an hour early and everybody else was early too. So we literally had seen a whale before our tour was officially supposed to start. Yeah, it was great.
Amazing.
And we were, I don't know, how far offshore do you think we were at the most? Like 200 meters?
Probably. Yeah, from like the shore, because the bay is actually inside. You have to go
Yeah,
under
you go under a little bridge.
a bridge. That's
Yeah, but from
the
the
highway.
like the outer edge of the shore, we were like, yeah,
200 meters.
300
because
meters
we were
offshore. Like
very close.
so close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a kelp area there, and gray whales, especially these gray whales, feed on mysids, which live on kelp.
Yeah.
So as opposed to the gray whale feeding that we see here, which makes me feel mad about gray whales in my normal feelings about gray whales because they're just rolling around on the water and going down and scooping stuff out from the sand
bottom.
to eat their
Yeah.
little bivalve things. These ones are actually in the kelp, blowing bubbles to get the little krilly shrimpy guys. Hey, krill, off of the kelp to
Yeah.
bubble on up.
Yeah, so basically there was like a pretty cyclical feeding behavior. Like you'd see a big bubble come up, and that would be the whale underwater blowing a bubble to like shake the mysids up, loosen them from the kelp. And then a couple minutes after that, they would do like 3 to 6 breaths, like in pretty close succession right at the surface. And then they would do a dive. We saw a couple flukes, all backlit, so we didn't get any good pictures, but yeah, a couple flukes, but not usually because I think it was pretty shallow. And then they would dive down deep, and then after a couple minutes, you would see a big bubble. And so like you could watch the same whale feeding in a pretty small area, like pretty regularly, and like get to sort of see their rhythms and stuff. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. And the fun part about that also is that they are kelping at the same time. So they were often covered in kelp. And there were times when they would be a little bit more enthusiastic with their breathing than we would expect. And so they would come up and they would just be covered in kelp, very sea monstery.
Yeah.
And that's always fun.
Yeah. Super
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
So we saw probably about 5 in the active part of the whale watching.
Yeah.
maybe 3 at once in a kelp bed. Hard to tell.
Yeah, I think we saw 3 at once, and then sort of, and we stayed with one for a long time,
whose name was Marissa.
Yeah.
And we'll say these names were given to the whales by the naturalists of Depot Bay.
Yeah.
The Oregon State University does have IDs for them. I was going to look up the catalog and totally forgot, so I'll put it in the show notes if I can find it.
Yeah.
If it exists, or a website or something about these IDs. So they usually have, like this summer they had 40 of the resident animals come back, and the naturalists, like, this guy has been doing it for millions of years, and so he just knows them. Similar to well-experienced naturalists anywhere in the world. If you see the same whale, you're just like, oh yeah. He also had been out, because it's such a short trip, he'd also been out like 5 times that day already.
Yeah.
Because it was like 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, Marissa's over here. We'll just go watch her. So I don't know what Marissa's technical official identification number is, but if I can find it, I will add it to the post for this story.
Yeah. We also, it was really cool. There was a whale that was further off, like deeper than the kelp beds. And yeah, we saw that one sort of out in the distance. And then one of the other boats realized that it was sleeping, which was cool. So it was really neat to get to see a whale sort of just floating right on the surface. You know, everybody was giving it lots of space because, like, they're sort of half awake, but like pretty dumb. So like you wouldn't want to get too close because they're not that awake. And because this whale had a lot of barnacles, and also it seemed like the boat driver said he had like a bit of a like skin condition, basically was really light in color all the way along. So even when he was a couple feet under the surface, you could see pretty well where he was. And yeah, so he would just kind of like float along, you know, a couple very occasional pumps of his tail, like very half-hearted, and then like gentle breaths, like way different than the feeding breaths, like way softer and like smaller. And
yeah,
then,
he was also a much shorter whale. He's probably
he was really small,
smaller than our boat. He did come pretty close at one point.
Yeah,
but I think his length was comparable to our Zodiac. Well,
yeah,
the feeding female was
way
really
bigger.
big.
Yeah, she
like,
was huge.
It's been a long time since I've seen a whale, and it's been a long time since I've seen a gray whale. But
yeah,
that whale was big.
Yeah, and because we saw them dive, like.
Yeah.
So we saw their whole body, because like sort of their snout rostrum area would kind of come up, and then they would go down, and we would see, like, you'd be like, oh, they're gonna fluke, and then no, because they're so long.
There's still more body.
She was so long, especially. Yeah. So that was cool. His name that the naturalist has given was Lazy Bones, which was fitting his current behavior. Yeah. And then we had like a 10 or 15 minute drive back to the dock, and we saw even more blows on the way back. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and then we got
chill.
almost to the bridge harbor thing, and there was one really far in, like past the kelp beds near the harbor, which was a little bit odd.
Yeah.
But then it fluked, and then we went home, and it was very nice. It was
very magical.
And then we went to a restaurant and had grilled cheese and tomato soup. It was great.
A+. Oh, and we saw a pelican.
Oh, yeah. And sea lions, but
and sea lions.
You always see sea lions.
Yeah, they were like...
They weren't even cowies. They were just stellars.
Yeah, they were just hanging out on the... Yeah. Hanging out on the buoy, like any good sea lions. Yeah,
like any sea lion thing.
Yeah,
it was great. And
it was great.
The boat, the charter, the whale watching company that we went out with was called Whale Tales.
Yeah, or Whale's Tail.
Whale's Tail.
Whale's Tail. Well, yeah,
that's just perfect.
Yeah, and it seems like it was a pretty small operation. Like I think the boat driver and the person sort of in the office are like the only, like they're the co-owners, and that's it. Yep. So yeah, very fun, very chill, and yeah, seems like there was bigger boats, and there was some that seems like they maybe do like seasonal or morning, like fishing charters, and then they do whale watching in the afternoon. Yeah, so lots of different boats. We were definitely the small boat out there, which was nice.
Yeah,
so that's our whale tail.
Hooray!
It's the first time we've gotten to do like a live whale tail.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I know, because we haven't seen whales in so long.
So long.
I know.
Since
we've
like
the podcast. Read old stories on the podcast, but not like, a fresh one. Amazing. Okay, before we head out, we wanted to give you some calls to action, especially for the fall/Halloween. And I'm going to steal this one from Lindsay's sister, because she does a really cool thing for Halloween with, I think, herself and her kids, where as soon as the thrift store near them puts out Halloween costumes, she goes and picks out their Halloween costumes from the thrift store. And I think it's great. And I'm a big advocate of thrifting or just scrounging up around your house Halloween costumes rather than like buying a whole fresh costume or like, yeah. So I don't know. That's my recycled, reused Halloween costume. And also you get a costume from the thrift store and then you give it back to the thrift store and somebody else wears it the next year. Like, it's great.
Yep. And also then you get double Halloween because kids get to wear it in August and they're super excited about it and they call you and you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, so
and
you
then
get to use it for like
forget
2
about
months.
it because they're 5 and they get to wear it again in October.
Yeah.
And yeah, recycle. I was going to say with recycling costumes and finding what you can find. Once my mom, not problematic at the time, made a Pocahontas costume for my sister out of our curtains.
Amazing.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
Mine is also my sister's. They all have Halloween craft day. A bunch of people come over, and last year we made spiders out of toilet paper rolls and one paper towel roll, which was an epic spider. So yeah, just there's so many. I found an entire website for her last year of
like recycled Halloween crafts.
Yeah, like coffee filters and toilet paper rolls and all sorts of things. Obviously paper bags. Like there's lots of things that you could buy but also just have around your house or are things that you're going to recycle that you just, construction paper, googly eyes, pipe cleaners. Done.
So fun.
When your kids are 5 to 10, like they don't care.
Yeah.
So the act of making them and then having them in the house for 3 days for Halloween is the good stuff. So I'll find a link because there's millions of Halloween things, but I'll find one and put it in the show notes for you guys.
It's not exactly a recycled craft, but it is on the subject of Halloween. Reusing is probably a better way than I would say, and it's science-based.
Ooh.
This is a science experiment that is also my kids' favorite thing to do these days. And I like it because it helps me caffeinate myself. So here's my little shout out. If you want, and you know what I will say, it's legit cool. It's not just 5-year-old cool. It's legitimately a very cool science experiment. So if you have tea bags, sort of like your typical, no-name brand tea bags, not they do have to have the string attached, so like
Tetley bags or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But they have to be kind of like the
papery ones, not the silky ones. Yeah,
exactly. What you're gonna do is, I'll see if I can find some actual instructions to share the visuals of this as well. And also I will say we learned this from, shout out to Emily's Wonder Lab, which is a Netflix show that is really awesome for kids and adults alike who like science and wonder. So you take a tea bag and you cut just the little bit that has the staple off at the top, and then you pour the tea leaves into a diffuser so that you, the adult, can have just straight tea, and it's very good. And the tea does not go to waste. And then what you can do, and I had no idea a tea bag looked like this until we did it the first time, and now we've done it like 5 different times. It's always a hit. You unfurl the tea bag and it becomes actually like a toilet paper roll, like it's a tube.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? Because it looks like a square. And then when you cut that triangle bit with the staple off at the top, podcasts, I really wish were a visual medium just for this.
Yeah, I'm sad that we don't also get to see your interpretive dance.
Sorry. When you cut that off and then you pour the tea out, it unfurls and it's a tube. So then what you do is, in a bathroom or other place where it's safe to use fire, this is where it becomes a legit cool experiment. While you are caffeinating yourself with the loose leaf tea now. You stand this little tube of a tea bag up, and with a lighter, you light the top of it. And then you watch as science happens, because tea bags are very, very light, and heat rises. And so then it flies
What?
on fire. But don't worry, it's not going to burn anything because it also burns really, really quickly. And so it turns to ash very quickly.
Seems like a great outside activity.
Yes. We've done it in the bathtub a few
yep.
times when it has not been appropriate weather-wise to do outside.
Yep.
And it's super safe and totally fine to do in your bathtub.
Nice.
It's not going to catch your shower curtain on fire or anything like
Yeah.
that. Like, literally, it burns out in under 3 seconds.
Nice.
But in that 3 seconds, it flies.
Ugh.
And so Emily's Wonderlab called this a teabag ghost.
Mhm.
And it's spooky, it's Halloween themed, you are using something in a new and interesting way, but you know, if you're gonna make yourself a cup of tea,
Yeah.
you're gonna have this anyway, so
Yeah.
just the only thing I would say is you do need the tea bag to be dry, so take the tea, like
Yeah.
the loose leaf tea out before you brew your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't catch on fire if it's wet, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, and then it's really, really cool.
So fun.
So enjoy the magic of science. And I would like highly encourage even if you have no children in your lives.
I know, I'm like, should I do
Do
this
it.
with
It's
my
really
tea that I
cool.
will be making as soon as we finish this recording?
It's really
Might
cool.
happen. Amazing.
So yeah, not our regular call to action, but just kind of we wanted to
Yeah.
do some fun. Like, how can you have some fall fun in some interesting and still environmentally friendly ways?
Yeah.
Yeah, we love spooky times.
Indeed.
We do. And I think that about brings us to the end of our episode. So we would love to hear your thoughts on this or any episode, and you can do that by visiting our website, whale-tales.org, and finding links to our various social media handles to drop us a line.
You can also head to our site to subscribe to the podcast, learn about supporting us and everything we do at Whale Tales, or becoming a patron. And you can also check out almost 1,300 whale, dolphin, and porpoise stories.
That's whale-tales.org. Tales like the stories, not tales like the animal.
And if you've seen a cetacean at any time, doesn't have to be last week when you were on vacation, we would love to add your story to our library. You can click the share link on our site, contact us on social media at whaletales_org, or you can email us a voice memo and tell us all about your incredible cetacean encounter.
Join us next month on the last Wednesday of the month again, right? So
Yep.
we're gonna
Right
this is
before
gonna be
Halloween.
right before Spooky Spook time on October 25th, when we will have a special guest joining us for our next episode.
Who could it be?
I don't know.
Is
Who
it-
could it be?
would it
Who
be
do we
the
usually have
same
at this time of
guest?
year
We have every October.
to give us a bit of a summary of what life was like on the water in the Salish Sea this past
Hooray.
summer.
I love this
Yay.
episode. So
Yes, it's our
excited.
friend Ashley.
Yay! That'll be fun. I can't wait. Hooray! Finally, we want to acknowledge that we recorded today's episode on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples and the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, as well as the homelands of the Tsawwassen First Nations.
Thanks everybody so much, and we hope you have a whaley great day.